Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is something that some of you in here are having to struggle with this semester. Others maybe not, but you will probably next semester. And that has to do with vocabulary or definitions. What I always tell students is that if you're in a class in college that ends with ology, you're going to have a lot of vocabulary to learn. So psychology, biology, sociology, they almost have their own language. So there's a lot of vocabulary. Even other classes, you would as well. Well, one of the things that I've discovered over the years of teaching is that most students, when they have a big set of definitions to learn, they do it the wrong way. They think it's the right way, but then when they get to the test, bad things happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a definition on the board, and I'm going to use that as an example in just a minute of something. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this word. Some people usually are, and some haven't really heard of it before. But I'm going to just copy here the definition of this word, and then, as I said, I'm going to use this in a second. Okay, now if you had this definition to memorize for a test, just that one, you could learn that in 1 minute or less and you'd be done. But if you had 30 or 50 or 100 definitions to learn, what do most people use to learn definitions? Flashcards. So they run for the cards and they write the word and the definition, get a stack of them, and then go around all day testing themselves. That's a good way to study, except here's what happens. I'm going to show you briefly the wrong way that most people try to learn definitions, and then I'm going to teach you the better way that almost always leads to better understanding and better grades. Okay, so that's kind of how we're going to go with this. So the wrong way that most people try to learn definitions is this way. And I think some of you, when you see this, you're going to think, that's the wrong way? I thought that was the right way. So here's what it is. Word for word. Okay, and so what I mean by that is this. When a student has their stack of flashcards that they made, and they look at a word, and then they say the definition out loud, and then they check and see that they got it exactly right, they assume that they know it, and they put it in the done pile, you know, got that one, and they work through their cards that way. That all sounds good, except what do teachers do a lot on tests that would make that not work at all? They reword the definition. Yes, they change the wording around all the time. Do they do that to torture you? Some people say, yes, that's exactly why. But it's actually to see if you know what it means. Wow, what an interesting idea. So if you memorize the card and you've got the words and you can say them anytime, night or day, people think, ready for that one. And then if the teacher changes the way it's worded, you're lost, like you never learned it in the beginning. So this doesn't work, okay? The better way involves 4 steps. And I know that you'd rather have 1 step than 4, but if you want to learn the material, this is what you need to do. First step in the better way, this will confuse everybody for a minute. That's step 1. Okay, and I've had people say, well, make up your mind. Is that the wrong way or is that the right way? And the answer is sort of both. Whenever you have a definition you have to memorize, the first thing you have to do is cram the definition in your head. You have to learn it word for word. Okay? But if that's all you do and then stop, that's where problems come in. So this is a necessary first step, but it's only a first step. So for these other 3 steps, I'm going to start to show you something related to this. I don't know what it is about me. Sometimes I look around, see if I have a sign on me, but students come up to me all the time and say, could you test me on my vocabulary? I have a test coming up, and they want me to test them. And I say, okay, when's your test? And sometimes they say, 20 minutes. And I just say, get out of here. I just say, there's nothing I can do for you now. You either know it or you don't. But if they say it's next week or it's in 3 days, I say, okay, give me your cards. They give me the cards, and then this is what happens. I say, your first word is tariff. And they get this look in their eyes that people always get when they're trying to spit back something that they've memorized. It's kind of like this glassy-eyed look, and they say, tariff is a system of duties on imports and exports. And then they look at me and I say, perfect. And they say, yes. All right, let's go on to the next one. And I say, well, wait a minute. Before we go to the next one, could you do me a favor? Could you tell me what tariff means? And they say, I just did. And you said I got it right. Come on, I don't have much time here. I said, no, but what does it mean? And they say, I just told you. And so I say, okay, stop. And so I do this. I say, do you see this word right here? And they look at that word like it's the first time they've ever seen it in their life, even though they just said it to me like 20 seconds ago. I said, what does that word mean? And they say, I don't know, that's a good question. I said, yeah, it's kind of a good question. What do you think duties means? They say, well, it means your job, like your responsibilities. Those are your duties. And I said, okay, I'm glad you said that. It's wrong, but I'm glad you said that. In the English language, probably 90% of the time or more, when you see this word in a sentence, that's what it means. Your duties, your job, your responsibilities. But in this case, that's not what it means at all. Anybody know what this means here? Yes, this is a type of tax. Is it important for you to know that before you take the test on this? Yes, because if you get a really easy teacher, you might get lucky. The teacher might say, a tariff is, and then this is one of the choices. So if you memorize the card, you got it. But teachers don't do that very often. Instead, the teacher might say something like this: which of the following is a type of tax? And they give this as one of the choices. And you look at it and you think, ooh, a type of tax. I'm not really sure I know that, but I know it's not tariff, because tariff is a system of duties on imports and exports. In other words, you've got that definition in there, but where does it say tax? Nowhere. So all they had to do is change it a little, and you are like in a dark room trying to find the light switch. You're just lost. So how do you fix that so that that won't happen? Well, here's what you do. This seems really obvious, but most people don't ever do this, and that is to know the meaning. And by this, I don't mean know the meaning of the definition. It's actually more. It's this: know the meaning of each word in the definition. Okay, and so that may require you. Yeah, actually it is. Sorry, we'll be done in just a few minutes, so maybe next time. Okay. If you look at all the words in the definition and you think, I'm positive I know the meaning of every one of those, then you don't have to do this. But if you look at one of the words in there and you're thinking, I'm not even positive what that means, you need to look it up. You look it up in a dictionary. You look it up on dictionary.com if you have a laptop or any kind of computer, and you find out the meaning. Okay? And then for these two, number 3 and 4, there is a word that I would love to have you remember. It's not a very interesting word, but it has great power to it when you use it the way that I'm going to show you. This is my great power word. It's the word and. That doesn't seem very powerful, but it becomes powerful when you do this, and that is you put a question mark after it. So here's the way this looks. Okay, this person says to me, tariff is a system of duties on imports and exports. The next word out of my mouth is and. And if they look at me like a lot of students have and say, and what? Then you know what that means? That means, don't ask me anything else. I'm just proud I know that. That's a bad sign, right? What do I want them to be able to do when I say and? I want them to be able to say this. That means it's a kind of tax on what comes in or out of a country. In other words, the same thing, but in their own words. I think you know this, but if you can't explain something clearly in your own words, what does that mean? It means you don't know it. You may say, oh no, but I know it. No, you don't. If you can't explain it, then something is stuck in your understanding. And so what you do is this. You work for 1 minute, for 10 minutes, however long it takes, until you can restate the definition in your own words. Okay? Until you can do that, you are not ready for the test on that material. And so that's why you need to know the meaning of each word in there, and then you try to figure out how would I say this or explain it in my own words. Once a person does that, once they say that means it's a type of tax on what comes in or out of the country, the next word out of my mouth is and. and this is when they're about ready to start choking me because I keep pushing them for more. What I want them to be able to do is one more thing. And if they can do this, they are ready. And that is, I want them to be able to give some kind of a fact or an example of that word that they either learned in a lecture or from their textbook. And so I'll give you the little example here. The person says this, and then I ask them, and they say it's a type of tax on what comes in or out of a country, and I say, and they say, and I remember in our book it said that the United States imposed a tariff on Cuba in 1960. Some fact like that, okay? If you're able to do all of this, you're as ready as you're ever going to be, and it should be true that no matter how the teacher asks this on the test, no matter how they word it, shouldn't matter. You should be able to get it right because you know way more than just the words. I always tell people that I could find a child, if I could find one who's like 4 years old, and I could bring them in here and I could teach them this definition, and they'd probably learn it faster than anybody in here, and then they could be running around the room, and all of a sudden I'd say, stop, and they'd be like this. And I say, tariff. They say, a system of duties on imports and exports. Good, go. And then they just keep running around. So they nailed it. They got it perfect. Does that mean they understand it? No, they just memorized a bunch of words. So some people get so excited when they can say the back of the card and they're thinking yes, but then problems occur. So if you go through the time it takes, whether it's just a minute or two or more with each word to be able to do all of these, that should mean you're ready to go when the test comes. Okay, any questions on this one?